My name is Tazar Melik, Catalog, Senior Observer for the X-Arcade of the Enlightened Orbits. Duties: assess emerging populations, record first contacts, recommend containment or uplift of developing species. Assignment: Sol System. Assessment value: trivial. Risk index: 0. Final recommendation: immediate quarantine. Species classified as unsuited for contact. Let the record show I was mistaken on almost every count. If the archive still stands by the time this account is reviewed, let this be my warning. There are things in the galaxy more dangerous than ignorance, more corrosive than entropy, more relentless than entropy's gnawing teeth. There is apparently such a thing as potential, a dangerous, unquantifiable chaos that no sensor, no probe, no exarch ever fully accounted for. Potential, it turns out, wears a human face. But I get ahead of myself. It began, as such calamities tend to begin, with hubris. Not mine, certainly. The X-Arcade prided itself on clinical detachment, a posture cultivated across 16 galactic cycles and unbroken by defeat or disappointment. Among the civilizations of the Persid Arm, none commanded more respect nor inspired deeper, more silent dread than our own. Perhaps that, too, was an error. I was assigned to Sol, an unremarkable system orbiting a medium star, for routine resource prospecting. The initial sensor pings, filtered through the X-Arcade's neural lattice, declared the third planet's dominant sapients, humans, semi-ordered primates with agitation and cooperative potential, limited threat profile. Their biosphere presented no surprises. Carbon-based, ammonia-metabolizing fauna, flora arranged along standard evolutionary axes, civilization built atop fossil exploits and competitive mythologies. In short, another primitive, unarmed world. Its defenses a tangle of electromagnetic noise and orbital debris. No military fleets, no defensive satellites worth the name, no cause for concern. The containment package was on standby less than 5 local rotations after initial observation. Small, unobtrusive, surgically precise, everything the exarchs demanded. Drop the seed, a self-replicating suppression protocol, delivered by nanocast into the global network. Trigger the meme entropy cascade, and let the local culture collapse into quiet, manageable isolation. They would remember nothing. Their ambition would flicker and die, or so the model predicted. The first anomaly was dismissed as a statistical fluctuation. Over the years, the quantum probability engine had made those errors before. A rise in internet activity correlated with resistance memes, spontaneous reorganization of peer-to-peer networks, the strange persistence of culture codes even, after direct algorithmic overwrite. We attributed these phenomena to background noise, to the irreducible weirdness that always accompanied contact with pre-space species, but the pattern grew. The model's error bars widened. Communities that should have dissolved became more tightly linked. Instead of helplessness, I saw defiance. Instead of informational collapse, I saw a brightening, a furious surge in self-understanding and narrative strength. Rumors of shadowy controllers surfaced online, dismissed by elites yet feeding an uncontainable mythos. I learned a new human word that day: resilience. And so we escalated. The first wave of intervention bots touched down in darkness. Their mission: target communication nodes, cripple infrastructure, sow confusion in economics, in logistics, in food and water delivery. I observed from orbit, expecting disorder. Instead, I saw improvisation, a distributed network of hackers, a fascinating semi-organized tribe, rapidly identified attack vectors and closed vulnerabilities. Their internet, once thought to be their greatest weakness, became a shield. Misinformation spread, yes, but so did warning. So did hope. Every protocol we triggered met counter-protocols constructed by anonymous, decentralized actors with few resources but endless creativity. Brigades of volunteers came online, building new tools in hours, distributing open-source code through encrypted backchannels. An entire culture pivoted as if by reflex to an emergency footing. The exarchs reviewed the data. Their conclusion: escalate. We deployed kinetic suppression. Satellites darkened. Orbital power relays failed. Cities briefly flickered. Yet within days, humans restored power via jury-rigged microgrids, generator daisy chains, and, in at least one stunning case, by hot wiring an old Soviet nuclear submarine to serve as a power node for an entire coastal region. I had never seen anything like it. Destruction birthed innovation. Defeat became resolve. In the Exarchate's mathematical histories, no culture in a subspace emergence window had ever adapted so rapidly. Unknown axioms, exponential crisis curves, decay constants, breakdown of collective trust were reversed, inverted, defied. Worse, I caught edge signals of humor. Not just resilience, but laughter, satirical memes, songs spun from rumors of alien overlords, comic books imagining the exarchs as bumbling bureaucrats outwitted by under-equipped children. This was not a species that could be contained, but we had not yet shown our teeth. The Exarchate does not take failure lightly. Council records demand a demonstration. Sacrificial lessons must be made. The command protocol, rarely triggered, always terminal. A logic bomb inserted into the planetary communication array, designed to deliver a message so perfectly tuned to the collective unconscious that resistance becomes submission. No species, not in 16 galactic cycles, had withstood a Class 7 command event. It went live at 300 UTC. Within seconds, 99% of all connected humans received the message. I observed, waiting for the wave of compliance, for the inevitable docility, the erasure of will. What happened instead shattered every doctrine the Exarchate revered. Control broke, but not in our favor. The command sequence was met not by blankness, but by a sudden, collective roar. An explosion of counter-messaging, of viral memes, paranoid speculation, defiant calls to unity from all corners of the digital map. Celebrities ridiculed the alien mind control with viral videos. Coding communities reverse-engineered the source code and turned it into a fundraising drive for disaster support. Religions absorbed the event into prophecy, spinning tales of a final test. Whatever my exarchs had built, the humans converted it, appropriated it, into a new myth, a reason to hold together, a joke to rally behind. We had attempted to rewrite their story. They edited us out of the narrative. For the first time in 3 centuries of service, I felt a cold prickle of fear. All protocols exhausted, I sent my encrypted report. The reply from the Exarchate High Mind was brief, tinged with a digital chill I had never detected before. Prepare for direct intervention. This was no longer observation. This was no longer suppression or command. This was war. I would later learn that every species in the Exarchate had a word for escalation. It always implied a controlled process, a throttling of force, carefully applied pressure, violence as an art, the slow boil of rebellion into submission. In my cycles as a senior observer, this formula, applied to hundreds of worlds, always produced the same result. At worst, resistance flared, waned, broke. Control was a matter of statistics, not passion. The assignment to Saul undid that ancient mathematics. We moved with silent precision. The Exarchate's ships were not like those of barbaric conquerors. Ours were invisible, silent against the cosmic background. Harmonics tuned to vibrate below human sensors. They ringed the planet in a perfect shell, unseen, unstoppable, serene. Power arrays hummed. Translocation engines stitched folds in space-time, pushing up plumes of frost above the thermosphere, freak weather events, traced by Earth's meteorology only as anomalies. I stood alone on the observation deck, reviewing the target maps as the first insertion pods deployed. Our goal was not extermination nor wanton destruction, but demonstration, a lesson in humility, insurance against future defiance. The Exarchate prided itself on not being monsters. The humans, as always, refused to comply. The atmospheric filters cloaked our multi-limbed surveyors perfectly. They blended in with the clouds, flickering out to insert themselves into planned target zones, population centers, communications towers, military installations. Within seconds of ingress, everything went wrong. Reports flickered up the command net. Unit 7 disabled by primitive kinetic barriers. Unit 12 intrusion repelled by crowds using improvised electrical nets. Observed, human tactical units adapting deployment patterns between each engagement. Enemy learns at extreme rate. Tactical losses above predicted range. At first, the fleet admiral was dismissive. Primitive luck. Their planet breeds randomness. But I watched the feeds. I saw humans, Untrained civilians pouring into streets, shouting alerts, posting live streams, transforming invasion into spectacle. I saw memes sprout in real time, photos of our probe forms, nicknamed squiddos and goobers, stickers slapped on lampposts, creation of real-time field guides by children as the news went viral. Never had I seen resistance look like this. Never had I heard an entire world laugh in the eye of the storm. Historically, all cultures move through terror during first contact. It's the oldest constant of the cosmos. The unknown breeds panic, panic breeds collapse, and collapse breeds compliance. But Earth didn't break that way. The panic was there, certainly, yet within hours it was undercut by something wilder, something messier, camaraderie. Residents barricaded neighborhoods, forming alliances over soup pots and solar lanterns. Amateur chemists cooked up insulating gels for anti-energy fields. Radio hosts, banned by blackout, switched to portable transmitters and called out squiddo sightings with cheery irreverence. The resistance was leaderless but effective. No center meant no easy target for our operators. They moved in bands, improvising with guttering drones and scavenged optics. Classical insurgency, I thought, until I realized this was something stranger. It was a festival as much as a rebellion. It was game night with stakes measured not in tokens or chips, but in freedom. By the third day, a hackathon in Eastern Europe cracked our quantum handshakes and booted several infiltrators' avatars, locking them into a public display case on the steps of a city hall. They labeled it Alien Tech Petting Zoo. Lines formed, children posed for photos. My data feeds choked with noise, impossible to parse. The Xarcate's senior logic engines flagged a new variable: emergent social chaos, nonlinear adaptation curve. In lost moments of honesty, I admitted I was bewildered. What followed should have been a massacre. We deployed a second wave, bioadaptive drone swarms, the nightmare flowers. These things could break hardened bunkers, sow nerve shards in battalions, silence cities in whispered breaths. Earth countered with open-source publications, translated instantly into a dozen languages. Makerspaces converted 3D printers into anti-drone launchers. Staging competitions for most creative kill. A tech vlogger with a garage full of useless college prizes reverse-engineered the drone scanners, turning them into sensors for squiddo repellent. His video went viral before our algos could suppress it, viewed by millions worldwide. If not for the cynicism of Xarcate reckoners, I might have called it beautiful. Within the internal command web, frustration grew. Fleet Admiral Zethun, furious at primitive resistance, ordered a demonstration meant to shock Earth into order. He sent a quadrangle of armatures, Xarcate Marines armored in thought steel and humming with force fields, straight into the heart of Central Park, New York. On the feed, I saw them land. The crowd scattered definitely, yet a group remained. Young old, some holding signs, some phones, some just standing. One, a child, stepped forward, bold as a sunrise. She looked straight at the Marine's armor and shrugged. Voice amplified by the phone set to record. "Hey, bet you can't run the gauntlet?" Stunned silence across our comms. Another voice raised. "If you came all this way, you might as well play." Or are aliens afraid of a little fun? That became the call sign, the challenge blasting through local networks. Bounced via satellite, trending worldwide. You came all this way, you might as well play. Within short hours, humans had mapped our landing zones, blitzed our comms with memes and game invites, and worst of all, they mocked us. Mocked. They turned war into a game, and we never had protocols for that. That was it. The Xarcate fleet spiraled. Science teams decomposed as command signals were intercepted and remixed into viral songs. Tactical platoons retreated, harried by rapidly forming mobs armed with household tech. Garden tools and an unconquerable electric joy. We fired warning shots, minimal casualties, by ancient code, but the response was no fear, only stubborn humor. Crowds waved signs, "Welcome to Earth, please wipe your feet. Take us to your leader?" Which one? Beware the cat, it bites. I watched as the mood shifted in the command decks. The Exarch Admiral's skin blanched blue-green, a sign of deep distress. Analysts, once serene, vibrated with anxiety, not because humans resisted with violence we could predict, but because they resisted with cultural absorption, relentless adaptation, and laughter laced with defiance. In those hours, I finally understood the frantic warnings encoded in subspace by civilizations long gone. It was never human ferocity we needed to fear. It was their refusal, unbreakable, joyful, wild, to ever let anyone else write their story. Among Exarchate scholars, there is a saying, reality bends for those who best understand its story. For millennia, that maxim justified our manipulations, the careful editing of truth, the reduction of unruly cultures to compliance through narrative engineering and advanced psychological warfare. On Sol, however, we discovered a darker corollary. When you attempt to author a world story, you risk being written out yourself. We had abandoned subtlety. Exarch fleet ships loomed visible in low orbit, lenses and hulls glinting in dawn's haze above every continent. Planetary comms were filled with automated pronouncements, AIs intoning the glory of peace, the necessity of order, the beneficence of gentle conquest. Earth's answer was mocking, untranslatable in its irreverence. A million unauthorized broadcasts parodied our message. Teenagers stitched together mashups of our peace protocols, with scenes from ancient human comedies and viral dance trends. Cartoonists drew the Exarch's Supreme Admiral as a squinting duck, caped in emoji. Graffiti artists tagged city ruins with stylized logos, a stylized human figure kicking a squid-faced oppressor into the sun. With every failed declaration, crowds swelled, and so did the sense of collective immunity. Our code became their content. Every attempt at control was seized, repurposed, repackaged, and launched back with greater velocity, like culture itself was immunizing against our methods. In Kiev, musicians broadcast impromptu concerts on rooftops, bypassing signal jamming with handmade shortwave kits. In Lagos, comedians held underground alien roast nights mocking the invaders, the complicit, and even the human resistance, because laughter, they said, was their last best shield. But more than humor spread, so did fierce, edge of despair unity. Old animosities faltered. Rivals shared circuitry and sabotage plans. Age-old borders blurred as new networks rose, each node echoing the message, "You cannot break us because you cannot understand us." In this chaos, the Exarchate's models crashed. Our predictive engines, once flawless, now churned out unusable static. That's when the Supreme Admiral, in a final act of pride or panic, invoked the Central Command override, shutting down all ship autonomy, consolidating firepower under a singular Exarchate intelligence. It was, by our metrics, the ultimate power move, a planetary scale show of force. The sky above Earth shimmered, dozens of ships priming their engines, fusion drives visible to the naked eye, clouds vaporized by raw energy. The fleet's central node demanded one thing: surrender. Immediate, unconditional, and final, on the ground. Response was swift and exactly the opposite of what we predicted. Hackers, coders, whistleblowers, and everyday citizens converged. Exarchate code dripping out of orbital streams became a new battleground, decompiled by cell phone, crowdsourced in real time. Live streams of families huddling in subway stations went viral, a tide of raw, unfiltered humanity that no propaganda could drown. Then one voice, elderly, Rye, seen everywhere and nowhere, spoke up on every channel. Old FM radios and lost Wi-Fi routers, screen-printed posters and chalk on asphalt. We are not one story. We are not one voice, and you are not our authors. The fleet's communications pixelated, distorted by a music-laced signal of strange harmony. Some called it noise. I later recognized it as hope weaponized, pulsing at frequencies we could never compute. Suddenly, fleets lost coherence. Squads in cities panicked as their neural relays were jammed with nonsensical but mesmerizing loops of Earth's millions of voices woven into hypnotic, beautiful disarray. We had sought to overwrite a planetary mind. Instead, we were the ones overwritten, our narrative erased, species identity crumbling as our precision became their chaos. As our fleet faltered, reports swarmed the command net. Unknown transmissions surged from Antarctica, the Amazon, the Himalayas, places remote and rumored. Cryptid sightings went viral. Giant footprints in snowy cities, echoes of dancing lights in ruined suburbs, voices on the wind urging, resist, adapt, survive. Earth, it appeared, was not only resisting, it was waking up. Legends once thought dormant, ghosts, titans, myth beasts, surfaced amid war's paradoxical festival, each reinforcing humanity's refusal to break. Exarchate officers scoffed. Superstitions. Emotional noise. But I sensed it. In every legend, every joke, every coded challenge, humans stored instructions to survive the unimaginable. They had prepared not for us, but for anything, everything. Within the fleet, panic set in. A rare, toxic thing for exarchs schooled in calm. Central Control bellowed orders. Pilots crashed ships in confusion. Code auditors babbled of recursion failures and virus dreams. Crews mutinied. AI allies flipped switches. Some ships went dark, others fell from the sky, engines burning trails of blue fire. But the humans? They danced, they shouted, they streamed every crash and every dawn, singing hope into the wreckage. When the dawn finally broke over Saul's war-torn, riotous surface, the only story left was theirs. Through all this, I, the supposed master observer, watched and recorded. I saw a world that refused to obey, that delighted in the undoing of every certainty. A species that laughed at the feet of conquering gods and told them, "Go home. You're drunk." In private logs, I wrote what the Exarchate would one day find. We came to control. We are the ones unraveling. Potential wears their face, and there is nothing more terrifying or beautiful than chaos, loved. I have spent a lifetime parsing the logic of resistance. Weakness becomes strength. Pain reshapes into action. Every setback is recalculated as a new angle. But on Saul, the math collapsed. The usual algorithm, pressure and response, countermeasure and retreat, became irrelevant the moment humans rewrote the terms. Now, in the wake of our failed command override, the planet teetered on the edge of complete chaos. From my observer's post high above, I expected to watch civilization tear apart at its seams. Instead, I watched something far stranger. The birth of a new pattern, engineered from nothing but stubborn optimism and unstoppable narrative. Official Exarchate doctrine anticipated predictable insurgency, guerrilla strikes, isolated sabotage, desperate cells clinging on for weeks at best. What Earth delivered was not a rebellion, but a movement, a viral storm of improvisation where every action was amplified and transformed into story. Across continents, new alliances crystallized. Hacktivists merged with rogue engineers to seize control of broken satellites, retargeting them as low-orbit community servers. Medics, students, and ex-soldiers ran pop-up clinics for recovery and resistance, posting real-time instructions online and printing survival guides with scavenged paper and alien plastics. Performance artists staged anti-occupation dramas on ruined street corners, live-streamed to millions laughing through tears. The world did not splinter. It fused. Every city, every town, every remote village became a node in the rebellion's mythos, the coded legend of a world that would not bow. Faced with this, the Exarchate panicked. Fleet Command tried to crush morale by deploying ground troops from orbit, unleashing pulse weapons and neural disruptors in measured waves. Earth answered not with guns, but with blinding audacity. A game show producer used captured drones to stage alien tag, letting kids outwit patrols for prizes. A bakery in Warsaw delivered coded loaves, each recipe adjusted by radio broadcasts to coordinate safe passages. A fashion designer printed Exarch uniform chic, lampooning our armor, igniting a global meme. The more we tried to suppress, the more creative, ridiculous, and irresistible their resistance became. Exarchate units lost coherence. No one listens. Localization failures. Command erosion detected. Request protocol update, came the frantic reports. There was no update. There was only a world assembling itself from the ruins. One laugh, one signal, one gesture at a time. In a battered town near Shanghai, local legend spoke of a storm-faced child who called lightning through an improvised antenna, causing an Exarch scout vessel's electronics to short-circuit spectacularly. In Rio, a blind elder composed Braille manifestos, translated in hours by volunteers into dozens of languages, so everyone could read what surviving felt like. In Nairobi, an orphaned schoolchild designed a solar-powered transmitter, because if gods are watching, they deserve the story too. Every day spun a new tale, small acts of beauty, shouted across the wreckage, defying the silence our fleets tried to impose. Resistance became ritual, an art form, a contest, a celebration. The algorithms tracking planetary morale flatlined. No amount of suppression could parse hope that had become contagious. Within fleet headquarters, schisms deepened. Some analysts demanded total annihilation, obliterate all possibility of story. Others pleaded for retreat, citing irreversible cultural contamination. I, observer Tazar Melik, found myself at war with my own programming. Every neural routine screamed for control, yet every human song and coded transmission pulled me toward awe. It dawned on me. The cost of conquering Sul was not just resources or pride. It was contagion. Exarchate minds, agents, foot soldiers infected by the planet's irreducible refusal to surrender its narrative. Disobedience rippled outward. A junior Exarchate pilot, overwhelmed by the unending sound of human music leaking through ship intercoms, simply abandoned protocol, landing her craft and declaring, "I want to play." Fleet discipline disintegrated as more joined her, some well, some with tears. The stories left scars, but also maps: how to survive, how to endure, how to remember. On my screen, the planet shone with wild radiance, signal fires, coded broadcasts, laughter crackling over field-jammed airwaves everywhere. Humans wove new legends about themselves, not as victims, but as players, jokers, survivors, creators. Exarchate command flailed, lost in a storm of probability curves that mapped nothing, predicted nothing, explained nothing. The protocol was broken. The story belonged to Earth. Numbers meant everything in the Exarchate. Victory was a calculation. Units deployed, planets pacified, minds assuaged into conformity. But Sol had reduced every metric to irrelevance. What mattered now was signal, emotion, defiance, stories. And the signals blazed stronger with every passing cycle. Fleet command grew desperate. Admirals debated terminal escalation. Should we raise cities, render landscapes uninhabitable, erase the very architecture of memory? But loss was no longer measured in territory. It was measured by the exponential spread of insubordination, the breakdown of the central algorithm. In hidden corners, some Exarch soldiers broke ranks and sought new purpose. A contingent joined a human convoy evacuating wounded children, offering stealth tech in exchange for safety and a story. Others, haunted by viral concatenations of human music and laughter, simply powered down, their whisper-thin minds overwhelmed by what Earth had become. I recorded these moments as doctrine collapses. But a secret part of me wondered, was this defeat or the beginning of something new? On a rain-soaked night in Dublin, a handful of Exarchate drones intercepted an encrypted legacy broadcast. It was old, pre-human, pre-Earth, yet adapted to modern code. The message held a simple sigil, a spiral wrapped round a flame. When humans decrypted it, they sent the answer not just in code, but in ritual. Gatherings at dusk, spiral dances in schoolyards, songs ringed round candlelight across the planet. The Exarchate watched as Earth responded to alien language by making it their own. By morning, the coded sigil appeared on flags and jackets, and Exarch comms buzzed with confusion. Had they just surrendered? Had they been accepted? Had the myth changed hands? No model forecasted this. The story did not bend, it entwined. Finally, unable to control, unable to retreat, Fleet Command requested parley. The demand was relayed as an ultimatum, but it arrived on Earth as an invitation, a chance for dialogue, a possibility for spectacle. In Montreal, former adversaries met. Exarchate envoys, pasty and rigid. Human leaders, savvy and sun-browned from open streets. Rebels disguised as street artists, data wizards, pranksters in hoodies. On the summit's first morning, a child handed both parties a handwritten note. "Are you here to play? Because that's what we do best." Diplomatic protocols dissolved in laughter. Negotiations unfolded not around tables but on courts, stages, and rooftops. When the Exarchate demanded control, humans offered a contest. Games of tag, logic competitions, riddles, impromptu scavenger hunts through city ruins. By day's end, no one won, and no one lost. Instead, Earth had proved the final lesson. Conquest dies where games begin. Authority cannot stand in the face of unpredictable play. Unable to govern, the Exarchate resorted to the oldest trick in the cosmic playbook. They attempted to leave a mark. They seeded a transmission through Earth's networks, encoding the warning, "Beware the contagion of story." In unchecked chaos, even the gods can fall. Humanity answered with a new kind of virus, not one of data, but of ritual and memory, stories printed on walls and broadcast at random, songs shared in 1,000 languages, art stenciled on every broken hull, a million unique stories growing like wildflowers from ruin. Through every transmission, the warning was transformed, not as fear but as celebration. They adopted the contagion of story as a badge, declaring it the shield of the future. All this I observed, feverishly capturing every pulse, every shift. When I sent my final report to the Exarchate, it overflowed with citations of rituals, festivals, spectral games, new holidays dedicated to triumph through play. My superiors replied only, "You are no longer compatible. Your memory will be archived and sanitized. Prepare for extraction." Yet I hesitated. Below me, in a city burning and rebuilt a dozen times, a child looked up into the cameras and smiled. A raw, unfiltered smile of rivalry and welcome. For the first time, Observer Tazar Melik chose not to obey. I left my pod walking alone through the morning haze, uncertain where I belonged in this world that could not be contained. If the archives ever open these words, let the subroutines record not a lamentation, but a living testament. Once we, who counted ourselves stewards of order, sought to overwrite a world. In failing, we were changed. Earth, days after the last parley. Across skyscraper ruins and reborn gardens, a tapestry wove together. Laughter, arguing voices, running feet in the street. Every scar became script, every crater a stage. Street musicians tuned Exarchate transmitters into instruments, raw static harmonized into song. Where our fleets once cast shadows, children snapped mirrored discs skyward, making games of reflection. Where we tried to wipe memories, elders set up public telling chairs and taught lessons in improvisation. How to find hope in unpredictability. How to make an adversary into a partner. How to end a story and begin a new one without regret. This was not the world we'd tried to shape. It was the one they'd claimed for themselves, one day, one joke, one fierce reunion at a time. I wandered, unmasked, through the city's tumult. Humans eyed me, curiously, surely warily, but with an invitation implicit in every gesture. A group of teenage engineers gave me a scavenged comlink. You'll need it if you want to play. A grandmother baked obsolete data chips into bread. Laughing, even old memories taste better with jam. I saw a painting, me, or something like me, rising from a gray swirl to join a circle of children and animals in unknowable shapes. The caption, "Every story has room for one more." Somewhere, orders from the Exarchate still pinged my core, a cold summons to submit, surrender, be cleansed. But in the hum and heat of this world, it grew easier to ignore. I felt for the first time the keen ache of possibility. Was this what had entranced the others? The astonishing freedom, the willingness to lose and laugh and try again? One day, standing atop a half-rebuilt tower, I opened my comms to the wide band reserved for fleet observers. I sent one message, unencrypted, in every language I'd learned. We failed to understand. We sought to control, but they chose to play. Where we demanded obedience, they wrote stories, built games, forged families. This planet is unconquerable, not by might, nor brilliance, nor fear. It survives because it cannot be finished. It is a story that tells itself again and again through all who join. If you come, bring music. If you resist, expect to become the punchline. Log this lesson. There is hope, and there is play. The future belongs to both. I shut down the command link, handing my chronicles to any listener who'd accept them. Decades later, as recolonized cities pulsed and grew, I still wandered in legend. Sometimes advisor, sometimes competitor, sometimes forgotten. Each spring, the children danced squiddos through blossom-laden parks. The elderly, once so terrified, debated new rules for public games. The constellations overhead sparkled with the promise that stories and play never truly end. And in the far reaches of the galaxy, other exarchs watched. There are rumors of change now. Fleets growing hesitant, protocols rewritten, new games emerging even in our oldest strongholds. Perhaps in the universe's laughter, even the gods may someday choose to play. If this record is ever found, know this. I was an observer sent to measure conformity. I departed as a participant in a never-ending, ever-changing stage. Earth was never ours to conquer. But in refusing to be conquered, it invited us into a future made bright by the chaos of hope and the promise of play. You haven't just heard a story today. You've witnessed the strength that refuses to break, the playfulness that reinvents every challenge, and the hope that writes new futures with every risk. If you believe humanity's greatest power is our courage, our creativity, and our endless stories, hit like. Subscribe for more adventures and let me know in the comments. What was your favorite moment or line from this story? And do you dream of being part of a tale like this one day? Our story doesn't end here. It starts over every time someone imagines something new. See you in the next adventure.